Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I would like to call to order the May 5th, 2014 meeting of the Frederick County Planning Commission. Would you join us in a moment of silence, please?
So it doesn't, it just.
Thank you. Before we adopt the agenda, I would like to welcome Mr. Robert Molden from the Opequon District. I think everybody calls him Robbie.
Thank you.
Who has joined us today, and we look forward to working with you. Thanks for doing this work. Okay, we've got an agenda to adopt, no changes.
Madam Chair, I move for adoption.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Two sets of minutes, January 15th and February 5th.
Madam Chair, I move for adoption of the January 15th and February 5th meeting minutes.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Thank you. This is time for our committee reports. Sanitation Authority, Mr. Unger?
Yes, ma'am. February the 18th, the report given was we have 14,304 customers on water, 13,549 customers on sewer. Rainfall for the month of January was about 1.5 inches. The previous month, which was December, was about 5.5 inches, but we're still real good for the month, for the time of year now. Water production for the Deal plant, we used 2.7 million gallon per day. Anderson plant, we used 1.8 million gallon per day. We purchased about 3/4 million gallon a day from the city. Daily average is a little over 5 million a day. The elevation of the Deal plant was up about 2 feet, which is good. The Anderson plant was up almost 9 feet, which is real good. We haven't been drawing as much water out of the Anderson plant, but it has risen a lot. We did have a little bit of a problem at the Parker's Mill plant. Our nitrogen is up 10.13, normally is around 2. And the reason, Hood had some kind of a mishap over there and released more nitrogen than they should have, and we'll be getting some kind of notice from DEP about that. Leaks still contain about 17% in sewer. And we are also testing 2 wells at the Stevenson area, and hopefully they're going to turn out real well. They're having some hopes of them materializing. And that's all we talked about in that.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Rhodes, Historic Resources?
Yes, ma'am. We met and discussed the McCann property up in the Stevenson area about the comprehensive plan. The group voted to maintain a DSA over the area.
All right, thank you. Everybody know what a DSA is?
Developmentally sensitive area.
Thank you. Thank you. Transportation, Mr. Rhodes?
Yes, ma'am. We met and went over a few items. One was fairly lengthy discussion of private streets and the Shenandoah development. That'll be coming back through again. Basically, I got it sent out to a couple subcommittees to be reviewed before it goes much further. There was a request for Cowgill Road to be paved, to be bumped up on the list for hard servicing. It was determined that basically the way we rate our roads right now, we'd be better off keeping that same system in place. Plus the fact that we really don't have any funding to pave anything to begin with, so and probably won't for another 4 or 5 years. There was a group that had a private road out on 522 North that requested seeing about bringing that into the state system. So there was 4 or 5 owners there on that road, and we went through a long discussion of what it takes to get a private road into the state system, bring it up to state standards, that type of thing. Plus VDOT was there to provide information to them. I think the cost of bringing that private road up to standards is going to be more than they can bear, but at least they know what they have to do now. Ms. Schick was there to update us on the MPO, and VDOT gave us a presentation on basically how the county can, it's called e-evolution, where this county takes over the road. It's a program that's been in effect, I believe, since 2001. However, no county has decided to take the state up on that offer because the funding's about half of what you would get normally if VDOT was taking care of it.
Wow, wow. I would like to welcome Martha Schickel from the city of Winchester. Any news for us, Martha?
Ms. Schickel, you want me to take this? I'll be glad to.
Sure. I'll just say we have a work session. Our Planning Commission retreat was rescheduled to this Saturday, and we have another meeting on Tuesday, but I think you're going to cover for me for our last meeting.
I will.
Thank you.
Ms. Schickel was couldn't be present at the meeting. The Winchester City Planning Commission met on the 18th. They had a few things on their items. They had a public hearing for a request for a restaurant out on Valley Avenue that was approved for an entertainment district. They were just going for extra hours. They had a request from a Ms. Rhodes for conditional use permit to work in her home, which was approved. Then they had an ordinance to rezone some land on Commerce Street, which was, I don't think exactly was tabled, but it was put off to, they got a fiscal analysis report back from the local site engineers. And then they had an ordinance from New Vista to initiate an ordinance to amend some article for the floodplain. And then they had some administrative approvals that they took care of there on site. So that's pretty much what they had at their meeting last week.
Thank you for being there. You're going to next see evidence of our retreat, the Planning Commission retreat. And one of the things that we thought we would like to do on our agenda is to have Mr. Bob Hess, who serves as a liaison from the Board of Supervisors, to report to us back things that are applicable to the work that we do that came out of his last meeting. So, Mr. Hess.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. As you recall, at the Planning Commission meeting on February the 5th, you considered conditional use permit 01-14 for Wesley Rudolph. It was a small engine repair operation. And I think it was clear to the board when they considered it, you all had recommended approval and forwarded it to the board. I think it was clear from the board's review of your discussion that you had a desire to reduce some of the restrictions or conditions that have been placed on Mr. Rudolph, especially considering the location and the type of operation he had, the fact there weren't any neighbors close by. And so the board actually picked up on that and took that a little bit further. One of the things they did, since they agreed with the limitation on all repair operations taking place within the enclosed structure, they eliminated the restrictions on hours and days of operation, figuring there would be times, especially in busy season, where somebody needed a mower or a chainsaw or a weed eater or something the next day, and he might need to work late to get that ready for a customer. The other thing, it appeared that perhaps when you all had eliminated what was item number 5 on the original proposal that had come from the board, it eliminated any possibility of him storing any tractors, lawn tractors outside that he might be repairing. So the Board of Supervisors did add a condition enabling up to 5 vehicles, namely lawn and garden tractors, that could be stored outside awaiting repair. And again, since it didn't seem to be a problem, since all the repair work would take place inside, I think we are pretty much in agree with the intent of the Planning Commission and that thing to recognize the unique circumstances of that conditional use permit request.
Thank you so much, Ms. Hess. One of the interesting things that we found out at the retreat was the number of planning commissioners that didn't have access to the broadcast. And so we felt that we ought to at least learn what's happened at the Board of Supervisors, and thank you.
I think it's particularly important when we make some changes to the recommendations that you had forwarded to us, as was the case here. And again, this wasn't so much a conflict as much as it was taking an additional step a little beyond the approach that you folks had taken.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I believe that's the end of our reports. This is the time on our agenda. If anyone in the audience would like to speak to us on anything that's not on the agenda. Seeing no one, we will close the citizen comment. I'm sorry. I didn't see you, sir.
She did earlier.
Oh. Your name, please, and magisterial district.
Alan Morrison from Gainsborough. Looking at the floodplain overlay district. I read through that this evening very quickly, and my basic comprehension of that, it is designed for new development, that the county would take some dealing in preventing development within a floodplain, et cetera, and all of that. My concern is existing properties that are somehow in a floodplain but are poorly defined. Would any changes that this new administration make, would that have impact on current appraisal values? That would be a consideration. I saw that nowhere in there. But if you happen to own a piece of property at this particular time that is not developed, that is considered to be partially in a floodplain, though the map is likely not as accurate as it should be. If this new commission would find that that needs to be expanded, does that tie back to the appraisal value of the land? I have a piece of land that is valued at 4 times what it should be. I've been through the appeal process. The map says it's only partially in a floodplain. I have photographic evidence that it's not over 90% in a floodplain, but photographs obviously don't count. So this is that there seems that there should be a tie back from whatever this commission resolves back to the appraisal process, some kind of feedback mechanism. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thanks for your comments. Sir?
Quick question. Do you actually mean the assessment value? Assessed,
Yeah,
okay.
Appraisal for the assessment.
Okay, thanks.
Anyone else? Thank you. Now we will close the public comment portion. Thank you. Our first item is a public hearing. It is our 2014-2015 Capital Improvements Plan. This is a prioritized list of capital projects requested by various county departments and agencies, and this is an informational item for us, but it is a really an important component of our comprehensive plan, so that's why it's before us. Mr. Mike?
Thank you, Madam Chairman, members of the Planning Commission. Again, we have done a fair amount of work over recent years with the capital improvements plan, making sure it ties into the comprehensive plan. And while the rezonings have been a little slower than they were in previous years, of course, the CIP and comprehensive plan and the connectivity between that is very important. That keeps being reinforced. And this year's capital improvement plan continues to do so. The Comprehensive Plans and Programs Committee endorsed the CIP back in the end of last year, and they recommended that the determination be made that it is in conformance with the 2030 Comprehensive Plan. Following discussion here at the Planning Commission and the Board of Supervisors, the Board directed us to move forward through the public hearing process, and that's why we're here this evening. So tonight we're ultimately seeking 2 motions from the Planning Commission. The first is a determination that the Capital Improvement Plan is in conformance with the 2030 Comprehensive Plan. And secondly, a recommendation from the Commission endorsing the CIP. We went through in a fair amount of detail with a lot of folks present who represented the departments, who submitted their individual requests at the discussion time. We have a few folks who are here too, should you have any further questions. Generally speaking, the projects are up a little bit from last year, 92 projects, revolves around some being completed, some being added, and some being reorganized. The CIP itself includes quite a fair amount of information. It's summarized on a table, just briefly, 1, 2, 3 pages, which lists each individual project and the money associated with them, and also some view, if you will, as to when that may or may not come forward through the 5-year capital improvement planning process. Again, this is just a tool, another planning tool to assist the county as we move forward. It's certainly not a budget document. In addition to the table, there are 4 maps included which provide, if you will, a visual representation where the different projects are located. The first one, of course, is general county government for the most part. The second map highlights schools, current, future, potential school locations. The third one deals directly with parks and recreation. And the fourth one deals with transportation, those transportation improvements highlighted in the CIP. Some projects that moved off from previous years include all-day kindergarten improvements there at the school, Gainsborough Citizens Convenience Center, which was a public works item, and of course, the airport completed their runway in recent years. Some new and modified projects following on from last year's amended CIP, county administration in schools both reflect the county school board joint administration building. Parks and recreation projects are reflective of the public input survey efforts that they went through. And the transportation, as you may have noted on the map, has been split into two sections, both the funded projects and the unfunded projects. Again, that breakdown to put the transportation projects more in line with the county's road improvement plans and the funded and unfunded projects, obviously. Some minor changes to the library request, again, the airport request, and we have a couple of new company requests, those smaller items that are also part of the capital improvement plan. So again, we're seeking, following the public hearing tonight, we're seeking two motions from the Planning Commission, a determination on the CIP's conformance with the comp plan, and a recommendation endorsing the plan onto the Board of Supervisors. I'd be happy to answer any questions the Commission would have at this time.
Any questions of Mr. Ruddy? Don't see any. Thank you. This is a public hearing. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to speak to us regarding the CIP? Anyone? Well, we will close the public hearing. Thank you for that, Mike. Mike is looking for two motions from us. Number one, determination that the CIP is in conformance with the comprehensive plan. And second, a recommendation on it.
Madam Chairman, if there's no discussion, I hereby move that the CIP is in conformance with our comprehensive plan.
Second.
Any other comments? Mr. Unger?
Unger, yes.
Marston, yes.
Ambrogi, yes.
Manuel, yes.
Votes yes.
Robbie?
Yes. Robbie, yes. Kenny, yes.
Dunlap, yes.
And the chair votes yes. And the second motion?
Madam Chairman, I hereby recommend approval of the CIP Board of Supervisors.
Second.
Who made that second?
I did.
There you go. Thank you very much. Any other comments on this? All righty. Sir, would you like to start?
Dunlap, yes.
Kenny, yes. Molden, yes.
Votes yes.
Manuel, yes.
Ambrogi, yes.
Marston, yes.
Unger, yes.
And the chair votes yes. This will go to the Board of Supervisors on March the 12th. Okay, the second public hearing deals with public facilities and the 2030 Comprehensive Plan. Mike has a significant paragraph here he may want to refer to, and basically what we're talking about is an amendment to the comp plan in the public facilities component. And this is primarily dealing with the location of any county administrative facility. And where it would be changed would be in or added to as public facilities creating community. And so with that, I'll let Mike lead us through that.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Again, members of the Planning Commission. A little chronology with this. Of course, we've held some discussion previously at the Planning Commission, and the Comprehensive Plan Committee did so before that and endorsed this request as it moved forward. We had discussion at the Board of Supervisors initially, and then we went back for a second time with some further modifications to address a little bit of input that the board provided. So I will point out that on your desk in front of you is one sheet of paper, which is, of course, the amendment, and you'll see a few areas where there's some red writing. So I wanted to provide you that because it came out of the Board of Supervisors at the meeting last Wednesday evening. As generally almost exactly the same as what is in your agenda, is what is part of the proposal, and it's simply clarifying that the sewer and water service area is also part of the urban areas and is an appropriate location for such community government service facilities. You'll see it's repeated 3 places within the document too, again, just to provide consistency in that statement. So that met with the approval of the Board of Supervisors when we had the discussion with that, and that's why we're here this evening, again, for a public hearing. What this section or this amendment to the comprehensive plan actually does is clarify and support what is already in and amongst the comprehensive plan, if you will, when it comes to community facilities. So by the addition of the Frederick County Government Services with some policies and some methods of implementation, again, we're reinforcing the appropriate location and also promoting good accessibility to Frederick County Government Services by making sure that they are located in the appropriate areas. In addition, that making sure that they're also very, very accessible, in particular through the use of technology that connects the county with the community. And I think you can see that within the future focus. So this deals again with government services. We know that this section of the comprehensive plan has a fair amount of detail on schools, on parks and recreation, on fire and rescue, on Winchester Regional Airport. But again, this particular section reinforces government services in general. Just to highlight again that located within urban areas, which may include the county's urban development area, sewer and water service area, and areas identified as future or UDA centers. Again, reinforced later in the proposed amendment, and again, in the implementation steps, so it's consistently recognized. Again, good accessibility for Frederick County Government Services. With that, be happy to answer any questions that may exist. Again, it's a public hearing item tonight.
Any questions of Mr. Ruddy? Any? I saw some motions down there.
Thank you. And again, we're seeking a recommendation from the Planning Commission tonight onto the Board of Supervisors.
Thank you so much. This is a public hearing. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to speak to us about this item? Anyone? Well, seeing no one, we will close the public hearing. Any further comment on this?
Madam Chairman, back last summer when that request for the CIP change came through for the county office building, this is the biggest reason I kind of fought against that was because this was not in our comprehensive plan, and if it had been, it'd been a different story, but I like that we do have it in the comprehensive plan, or we'll have the comprehensive plan to just clean all that up, so that next time it comes for us, if there's ever another application, everything's gonna be clean. So, I support this.
Any other comments? Frankly, I would like to thank the Board of Supervisors for opening our eyes to the sewer and water service area. We were talking UDA all along, but we now got, I think, our needs covered. So. Anybody like to make a motion of some sort?
Madam Chairman, I move we adopt a change to the comprehensive plan.
Second.
Any other comments? Okay, Mr. Unger?
Yes.
Marston, yes.
Ambrogi, yes.
Manuel, yes.
Votes yes.
Bolden, yes.
Kenny, yes.
Dunlap, yes.
And the chair votes yes. This will go to the Board of Supervisors also on March the 12th. Our next item is the floodplain overlay district, and this is a discussion on the revisions to Part 702 of the Frederick County zoning ordinance. And instead of Mrs. Perkins, we have Mr. Lawrence who can help us, and perhaps with your questions, sir.
Thank you. This is a discussion item, so we're certainly looking for your input this evening. For the commission members who have been on the commission a number of years, you may recall back in 2009, we did a similar revision to the ordinance. Back in 2009, FEMA adopted new maps, and similar today, required us to change our ordinance if we wanted to continue to participate in the flood insurance program. What we have today is they haven't modified those maps, so we're still using the maps from 2009, but they have changed some, I guess, regulations that is now filtering down through the process and is being directed to us to make sure we comply with the new requirements of both FEMA and DCR. So that's what the changes are we're going to talk about this evening. So as I'm getting ready to dive into it, the premise behind this is to Frederick County, we participate in the National Flood Insurance Program, and to continue to qualify and have the opportunity for our residents to participate in that, we have to make these changes. As you can see in your agenda package, probably the last page of tonight's agenda is a letter from DCR, and that's the representative of the state who basically has told us, here's what you have to do. Staff has worked with them, come up with an ordinance. DCR has said that's acceptable, and that's what we're considering tonight. Procedurally, Ultimately, we'll be seeking Board of Supervisor approval following public hearing sequence. We submit it to DCR. DCR has already said the current format that we're looking at is acceptable to them, and they'll submit it to FEMA. So to, I guess, make sure we comply with FEMA regulations. Time-wise, we were given till the end of June to satisfy these requirements. So you can see where we're coming from on this. And a little, I guess, a little sidebar before we dig into it is I was at a regional commission effort last week, and through the discussions with other planning departments, Warren County completed this last summer, and Shenandoah County is just getting started on it now. And I think I heard City of Winchester might be doing it too, but the idea is that we're all going through the same process. DCR, or I guess FEMA, working its way down DCR, and then localities are being required to adopt the legislation. Now, on a positive note, the maps aren't changing through this effort. So the same floodplain maps that we had in 2009 still exist today. So that aspect doesn't change. What's changing is, I guess, the process of how you interpret, how you deal with people that are seeking to build in the floodplain areas. And then the appeal process, if you will. It's more defined, and that's what the changes are. Some of the ordinance, and if you look at the draft ordinance that you have, we try to show you what's new and what's old through bold and underline and strike through. And a lot of the materials are consistent. They've been reorganized, but a lot of the stuff is still the same. But then we do have some changes that we just want to bring your attention to. And Candace, she's been working on this. Unfortunately, she's not able to be here tonight, so I'll do my best of bringing you up to speed with it and responding to any questions you have. We have some new text regarding the designation and the duties of the floodplain administrator. Not a significant change. Historically, our zoning administrator is our subdivision administrator, who also is our floodplain administrator. So that's just changing the title for whatever reason. That's what DCR wants, and it continues to be a person we have here, so that's not a change. It's a change in terminology, but it's not a change in how we do business. New sections for jurisdictional boundaries and changes. If it's just more details, if we do a boundary line adjustment with one of our towns or one of our adjacent counties, there's a process that we have to go through and how we deal with floodplain. It's detailed. Chances are we'll never use it, but it's consistent with the state's requirements. Relocation and revisions to the description of special floodplain sections. It's just, I think, in my interpretation is it's pretty simple. It's clarifying what the different floodplains are, where you can build, where you can't build. Historically, if anybody was looking at the original floodplain maps we used from 1973, we talked about floodplains Cs and As, and in 2009 they changed the terminology, and they're just providing more details to that terminology today. You couldn't build in the middle of a flood river before. You still can't. You can't. There's restrictions as to how you build in the floodplain, which is the outskirts of it, just providing more details regarding that. I think it's important to note that this ordinance isn't changing. One of the questions we heard earlier is, does this change the assessment of the value of my property? And the best we could tell is it doesn't. What it does, in 2009, it probably impacted you the most because that's when the new floodplain maps came out. And through the process of flood insurance, people have learned that, hey, the 2009 maps now place the property in the floodplain. Now the house is in the floodplain. This ordinance tells you more defined process to go through the appeal. It costs the property owner funds to go through the appeal. And ultimately, it's not a Frederick County decision, if you will. It's an appeal that we help them assemble materials, and they go through and comply with FEMA requirements. I know Mr. Oates has done some of these over time. It's not a fun process, but it's the process that Homeland Security through FEMA has established, and it's been passed down through the different layers of government. Most of the regulations that we talk about is really going to apply for new construction. So if somebody wants to come in and build a house, if our mapping that FEMA gave us indicates that you're close to the floodplain or in the floodplain, it falls on that property owner to do the study to determine whether or not he's really in it, and then how can if depending on where he's located, there's opportunities to design the structure to exist, or you just can't be there. One of the benefits that we gained in 2009 is when we received the floodplain maps, they were digitized. Up until then, it was a drawn map from 1973 with a couple revisions, and you would guess at it. So we're still, it's not an engineered, we take the GIS floodplain maps given to us by FEMA, we take the property maps, we overlay it on GIS, and we have a better sense as to where the floodplain is on a particular property. But if you still have to go through the engineering and the process to determine where exactly it is, where the floodplain levels are. But I think the digital information we have is certainly more helpful. And that was something we got back in 2009. So, I mean, I'm open for questions, but what I found in reviewing it, first off, we were told by the DCR that this was the language. We had meetings with them, we tried to do things, and they eventually said, yeah, you've got the right language. So we don't have a lot of play on it. If we want to participate in the flood insurance program, we need to implement this. But our take is it better defines the process an individual needs to go through, a property owner needs to go through to try to appeal the floodplain designation. It gives guidance to staff. It gives guidance to the Board of Zoning Appeals, because that's one of the steps you go through to appeal as to how you weigh this and understand whether it's appropriate to grant a variance or not. But at the end of the day, it requires, if someone's going to appeal the determination that our mapping, that we've made looking at our mapping, that you've got floodplain impact, the burden falls on the property owner to go through and basically go through and hire the consultant to prove their case. I think one of the benefits of technology is we can give them a sense as to where we think FEMA stands on this, but it's not always right. But I think that's important, because in the older maps, we'd have to guess whether or not you're in a floodplain. We have a little more confidence now with our mapping, so you know whether or not you have to go through the appeal process or whether it's worth your monies to appeal it. But with that said, these are the changes that went through the DRS back in January, so it's certainly any of the members here can contribute some more comments if I didn't touch on it. As I said, Candace presented it to the DRS, and I've captured what I've been made aware of, but I'd be happy to answer any questions, comments. We want to capture any comments you have, and we'll share it with the Board of Supervisors, and then ultimately be back through for a public hearing.
Any comments? Yes.
Well, we had a BZA case last fall on this that actually applies to more than just residences. It also applies to barns, sheds, even a little garden shed is affected by this. You can't put it out in the floodplain if you want to be in the system. And to be honest, I haven't done one of these now in my business for about 10 years because there's so much red tape involved now that there's a handful of surveyors left that will attempt this, but it's just gotten so out of hand that I pass on them. I know we have to participate, otherwise flood insurance would cost, way too much for the property owners in Frederick County than anybody that wants to get a loan, so we have to be in the national program. But the maps that we have that were digitized, really they didn't change the maps, they just added new roads to it. It's the same old maps that are just digitized now, and you overlay it on the topography, and you've got the floodplain going up the side of ridges and down the hills, and it's nowhere near the stream sometimes. In other places I've seen, it almost misses the stream, so. But I feel bad for anybody along a floodplain, because you don't know if you're in or out, and you really can't go by those maps. You almost have to pay somebody to determine it for you.
The one aspect, and I agree, FEMA's maps, but having it on the GIS, we can lay it on properties where the original 73, we'd have a tax map here and a FEMA floodplain map there, and we'd have to guess with the overlays. So now we're getting a little bit closer, but you're accurate. They're not always perfect.
I know some counties, localities have gone through the process, and I don't know what it costs, but FEMA does have a program where the study can kick in some money, or the county can kick in some money and accurately determine where the floodplain is. And so there's not this big discrepancy between what the topography is and what the floodplain is on the map show. And that would save a lot of our citizens a lot of money, because it's not cheap to get a flood study done. I mean, you're talking over $1,000 every time easily. So that might be something for the board to consider, is whether to get our maps cleaned up for the citizens. Even places like Lake Sinclair, that doesn't even have a base flood elevation, even though common sense tells you it's always 1 foot above your lake is where your floodplain is. But since we don't have that map upgraded, every single person around that lake has to have a flood study done.
But that's currently, that's not,
That's currently.
it's current. That's not the new ordinance we're talking about. That's been in effect since 2009, I guess.
Right, right. I know we have to adopt this because our hands are tied, but, and it would be nice, as the citizen pointed out, if our assessors would take that into account when they assess the property, if it is buildable or not.
And we'll share that. We don't work directly with the assessors in this ordinance, but we'll certainly share those concerns with the assessor's office.
Yes, Mr. Dunlap.
Echoing Mr. Oates' comments, I do also have some concerns about the floodplain maps themselves, because I think it's probably not clear on what sort of datum these maps are based on. I bring that up because it's been a topic of discussion lately on the regulatory process, that some localities are using the GPIN maps or your aerial topographic data to determine flood limits, where that's actually prohibited under Section 54 of the Code of Virginia. You have to use specific field runs or topography or aerial topography that was performed under a licensed surveyor, photogrammetrist, or a land surveyor. And a lot of these county topographic maps don't meet that qualification. And so that thing can lead us astray to some, and result in property owners having spent a lot of money to try to get it corrected. So.
It's, procedurally, and it's not today's ordinance, but in 2009, when we got the digital version, we had changed the ordinance at that point. We also changed the review process internally when people wanted building permits. And between the planning department, the inspections department, and the engineering department, we were looking at various floodplain maps to make sure things run in the floodplain. And unfortunately, if those maps indicate that you're close to it, you're in it, then the burden falls back on the applicant to get his information together and get a surveyor, get his research to confirm that he can safely build it there. But that's been in effect for 4 years now, 5 years now.
Any other comments? Let me ask about the barn. The barn was in the previous ordinance. The barn was in the previous requirement. So really, we're not talking about changes in what this thing does, but it's more technical, it's more this, it's more that. Is that what we're talking about?
That's my take. I think the process, the impacts were created 5 years ago. Now it's just giving more details as to how it's how we determine and advise a property owner what the problem is, what the issues are, the concerns, and it helps them have guidance as to how they can go through an appeal process, and provides guidance to the BZA for what has to be looked at before you can overcome the floodplain concern.
Yeah, I wasn't pointing out that was new. It's just, when you mentioned it was for residential building, I want to point out that it's for a lot more than that. It's basically any kind of building.
I was at a simpler level. It's just change everything over, but in my mind, it just tightens up stuff.
It just
and
tightens
perhaps
things up,
makes them a
yeah.
little bit-
I honestly don't think it drastically changed. It's details for how we do things, but it doesn't change the rules.
Yeah, this part's just a cleanup,
It's
basically.
cleanup, yeah.
Anything else we want to tell the board that we think about this?
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Our next item is also a discussion information item, and it's our retreat results and summary. So, Mr. Lawrence, lead us on.
Okay.
Please.
And I'm not going to go through the whole retreat. We had excellent attendance, so I don't need to tell you what you already heard. What we wanted to do, though, is just touch on a couple of the action items. So some of the things, if you recall, at the retreat, we had a first session, a morning session, and then a late morning session. And what I'd like to talk about right now is that first session of the day, the 8:30 to 10:30 session, because what we captured in the minutes that were shared with you is we have a number of action items that staff is going to advance with, and we want to share that with you. And certainly, if we didn't pick something up or we misinterpreted something, let us know. So I'm not going to go through the whole minutes that was in your agenda, but I'm going to touch on a couple of the action items that came out of these various discussions. I call them sessions, and they were the activities from about 8:30 to 10:30 in the morning at the retreat. The first session was pretty simple. That was your planning commissioner handbook. We didn't get any action items out of that, aside from we do want to make sure that we provide you some guidance for your motions, for approval motions and denial motions. And that's captured in your minutes, but we're going to start working on that, so you start seeing more of that information as you're going forward to provide guidance so you can help make your decisions in a legally defensive manner. I think that was an important aspect from the handbook. We encourage you to read the handbook, but I'm not going to go through the rest of the handbook. The second session was, we had titled Meeting Thoughts, and that was how can we improve how we do things, how we share information from a staff perspective, how you all share information with us. And a couple of the action items that I wanted to touch on is we deal in a lot of words and terminology that the community's not familiar with. Our public hearings, our action items, our discussions, our UDAs, our SWSA, SWASAs. So what we will do is we will create a glossary of terms, and we'll include it in every agenda. It's probably the second page of every agenda. And as we come up with terms that we speak in but may not be generally understood, we're going to make sure we have definitions so people can understand how we're doing things. The public hearing action items and discussion, that's your agenda. So that helps clarify for the public that public hearing, you will open it up for public comment. Action items are not open for public hearing and public comments. So we just want to define that. We want to make the staff reports more user-friendly. So we will have executive summaries that we capture on the cover page. Tells you what the use is, tells you what the staff recommendation is. And then as we take it out to the board, it'll tell the board what the use is, what the staff recommendation, what the planning commission recommendation is. So real condensed executive summaries. We'll continue to include all the full information within the body of that staff report. So ultimately, you all get the benefit of what staff has learned, what the applicant has shared. If it's an ordinance, you'll get the benefit of what the committee's discussions were. So we'll make sure we capture it and you get the best benefit from it. And we'll carry it forward. Add your comments so the board can benefit from it. And then I guess the last thing I wanted to touch on meeting thoughts is CUP conditions. CUPs are unique simply because that's an opportunity for the county to say, okay, I think the land use is appropriate, but there's a couple conditions. There's parameters, restrictions to help guide that use. We want to start making sure that not only do we provide recommended conditions, but we also provide the thoughts behind it, the justification. I think we've gotten in the process of auto repair is a good one. We capture the conditions that are typically used for an auto repair CUP, but we have to tailor it to that particular site. So we want to make sure that we're not just giving you the conditions that were used historically, but we tell you why this is the right condition. So we'll give you all that information to help you make your decisions a little more thorough and understand. If everybody was always the same commissioner, then it may not be as important. But we do have changing commissioners, and we have citizens that want to understand what's going on. So the more details in the staff report is beneficial to everybody. So that's some of the changes on the meeting thoughts side of things. The third session was your committee and work group, and that was really sharing information. We want to make sure that when the work groups and the subcommittees or the committees have discussions, that all that information is shared with you. So we're going to make sure we capture, I'm not going to call them minutes because they're not going to be adopted minutes, but they're going to be meeting summaries. And we're going to share that with you all and the Board of Supervisors, and we're going to make sure that those summaries follow that staff report so that whoever reads the staff report, whoever reads the ordinance amendment understands the discussions that have occurred to date. It was noted that our work groups could become excellent grounds for future recruitment of interested planning commission members or whatever the case is. And I think that's important because a lot of times we do work groups, we go out and we capture citizens interested in something we're working on. We get them involved in the process. And more often than not, they become active and they want to understand what's going on and they want to participate. So I think we've got to always remember those are good recruitment grounds. Get people involved in what we do in the county and keep them involved in the process. So when that project's over, keep them involved, get them on another project, another work group, another committee. So that's something we picked up on. The fourth session was your commissioner board member communication, and the emphasis was how do we better communicate from the planning commission to the board and the board back. Supervisor Hess, he did an excellent example. You all recommended approval of a conditional use permit. The board heard it, tweaked a little bit of the conditions, and approved it. And through that liaison report, he was trying to share why the board made the changes. And I think that's important. So it completes the circle, so you understand that your discussions and your energies are certainly being considered and included in the board's final actions. And just to keep everyone informed, we'll continue to share. We'll start sharing, if we haven't with everybody, our development application action summary, as well as our 6-week calendar, so you can get a sense as to what's in the pipeline, what are we doing administratively on the staff level as far as site plan reviews, subdivision reviews, but as well as where we think applications are going to be coming in and how we're scheduling your meetings the next 6 weeks out. We've always done that. We've shared it with the county administration so they could understand when the board was going to get stuff. So we'll make that information available for you all. And the most important session that I'm going to bring up today was our 5th session in the morning, and that was when we talked about the Planning Commission mission statement. And what we essentially said is, we don't have one. Do we want one? And if you remember, at the retreat, we presented 5 mission statements. I call it conceptual. So we tried to tailor them to what we do in Frederick County. And there was clearly a preference for one of those statements. So and it's identified in your agenda as a preferred. We've since received some additional comments for tweaking that preferred statement. And what I've got it up there. And I would like to read through it, and you all certainly can read it too. And if it works for you, I would encourage you to consider adopting it and making it your mission statement. If it doesn't work for you, let's talk through it, figure out, are we on track, or do we need to pull back and work some more? But the draft mission statement that we're presenting to you this evening is as follows. It is the mission of the Planning Commission to fairly and impartially represent the citizens of the county on all planning issues brought before the Commission, and in doing so, apply all applicable policies, ordinances, and laws to bring about effective recommendations to the Board of Supervisors in support of the comprehensive plan and the citizens of our county. It's certainly the second half of that was tweaked a little bit from what you saw at the retreat, but I really, from a staff perspective, I think it captures what we do, what you all do as a planning commission, and what we do for the community. With that said, I'd be happy to answer any questions you have. If this mission statement suits where you think you ought to be going, we certainly welcome an adoption of it.
Yes, sir.
Eric, I'd just like to compliment, because I've gone to a lot of these meetings, and I think you're really taking some good actions about what was brought up, and things you wrote today there is excellent, and I really appreciate you following up on them. Just looking, when you were scrolling through, and I noticed this a lot, like with the abbreviations, since we talked about it, you still got them on there. No offense. But, I mean, it's just, to me, if it's written in a sentence prior to the abbreviation, that's just my personal thing. You kind of know what to go to and see it, like PC or BOS or whatever it is. And I noticed you're doing it there, and I know you didn't do it intentionally. It's because, we're having that meeting right now, but I do appreciate what you're doing with that. It really is nice.
Thank you. Yeah, I think from an outsider, the abbreviations that we use on our daily basis, we understand them. But we get people to come in and ask us, what is a PC? And I mean, so simple things that we take for granted, and that's what we want to make sure we've made all that information available and defined it.
Newspaper all the time, Shandor, like the college all the time, it's abbreviated, and I just wonder how many people read that, don't know what it is, and it's never stated in the article. You just got to assume what you're reading. Some people don't know that.
Right.
Well, as a rookie commissioner coming in,
You're not a rookie anymore, sir.
I'm sorry, Robbie took over. It was very, very confusing to me. All these abbreviations to pick up on, and you guys rattle them off every day you work with them, so I'm with Greg to say we appreciate what you're doing.
And what you're also saying, I think, Eric, is the fact that not is all of this just for us, but it's for everybody, and it will put some of these items up on the website, so
Yes.
you have them as a reference,
Certainly.
and, you ready?
Madam Chairman, about the statement, I think that's pretty accurate representation of what we do, and I think we ought to move it forward for a hearing to get it adopted.
We adopt it for
I
ourselves,
think you,
do we
I don't
not?
even know, you don't need a public hearing. It's your own, it's something that you choose to do.
We just do it tonight.
You could do it tonight if you want.
I hereby move we adopt it.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Thank you all. I think we had a great time at the retreat, and it's really fun to see all this coming to fruition. Okey doke. I've been informed that there'll be no further snowstorms for the remainder of our season. So, but on the other hand, we do not have any agenda items for the March the 19th meeting, so we'll need to cancel that. If
We cancel the March 19th meeting.
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Thank you. I can't do it.
Move for adjournment.
All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Thank you.